Just getting another stream started. Today's topic is this weird curvy blue thing. Hello, weird curvy blue thing. So we'll be getting back to that in just a second. But first, a word from our sponsor. So the blue thing, it's a mount for a status display that I'd like to use to help keep track of some of the moving parts in this Rube Goldberg machine of recording and streaming infrastructure here. So I did a previous stream that kind of took apart an old project and yanked the vacuum fluorescent display out of it. And then I designed a new mount to fit that display and a USB to serial converter around one of the many little vertical poles that I have here in the studio, and mounts magnetically. So I did a bunch of the work to begin that post-processing project off stream, on camera for video editing later, but it involved a lot of doing one step and then waiting around for glue to dry and then doing another step. I also did a little bit of the software prep, which is why we're here on the mobile camera to break the third, fourth, and/or fifth walls just a bit. And so over here we've got the setup that I've been used to from if you've seen any of these streams before. This is where I usually hang out. Here's the weird blue thing. And so this is the work area that I typically have. And then there's a few things that I need to keep my eye on during the stream. There's the actual outgoing image. There's the computer that I often have to work on in parallel with the hardware. This screen here usually shows the microscope, and that's on. There's the YouTube chat. Hello. The oscilloscope. So it's kind of busy around here. So I wanted to try to keep tabs on some of the extra information about the recording and streaming status without having to add another screen to any of this, and without trying to share the screen between OBS and something else. Hey, Tuco. You're the star of the show, you know it. So this is what I've come up with. Over here is the screen that I usually use to set up all the other recording tasks. So you can see there's Ableton running the audio here. Right now I will be on the wired headset, so you can actually see my voice there. And then there's the recorder that I use for the kind of demo machines. This other recorder is an instance of OBS that right now it's displaying the 3D printer, but it is usually there for the oscilloscope. And then this other screen is a different computer, which is running another instance of OBS for encoding and recording the microscope. So there's all that stuff that I have to have in a particular state, otherwise I either waste a bunch of hard disk space or lose footage that I want to have. So what I've come up with so far is this little display is currently just telling me the time, and it's giving me status for recording on one machine. That CB stands for color burst, which is the machine that's running the stream right now. And because I started the stream, it actually automatically started recording also so that I have an archive. So that's recording at 1.4 megabytes per second. And then it's also got an FFmpeg task running, which is, I think, just providing a lower bitrate monitor stream right now. And then the current time. But if I want to start recording the audio as well in multitrack, which is what I usually want. So all the cameras, everything that records video, so the streaming machine and the cameras, and the camera and the HDMI grabbers and all that stuff, they get a sort of rough mix of the audio straight out of Ableton. But I usually want to save the other tracks so that I can tweak this later in editing, or I can, I can isolate a single microphone and cut out background noise as much as possible. So Now I've got an indication over there that the audio is recording at 1.3 megabytes per second. And I'm not going to mess with it right now, but you could see the audio rate changing and dropping off if I turned off some of the streams that are currently recording. So then I don't need this right now, but if I went over here and started another recording for the microscope, then that starts up. So BR is another acronym for that machine, Brassica, and it's recording at about the same bit rate. That number in brackets only shows up if the drive that it's recording to has less than about a terabyte free, and that's just the number of gigabytes remaining. So just a little warning if I'm getting a little bit low on space so that I can keep tabs on it. The other recording devices there would show something. They just have more than a terabyte free right now. So that's the basic idea. You know, things start dropping off the end if there's not enough space, so there isn't room for the clock right now. So I tried to list things in some kind of priority order. So let's stop the microscope. And now you can see this is actually back down to what I wanted right now, just the mainstream recording and audio. And cat. Hey, cat. So that was just a quick kind of breaking the usual context to show what this is going to do. Right now I've just got this wired up in a kind of temporary fashion on this vise. The USB to serial adapter kind of dangling out there with its original cord. So the wiring here is kind of temporary. I'm going to be following largely the same approach, but the USB adapter, I'm probably going to have to, well, I'm planning on using a USB Type B connector, so the kind of full-size chunky connectors that you find on devices like printers. And I'm just planning on wiring that manually, kind of with heat shrink and small wires up to the pads on this board. So I'll be taking off that cable. Oops. All right. Oh, sorry, Tuco. Oh, Tuco's sitting on the wire for the camera. Well, so that will be more lively once we start working on the electronics. But I think the next step is to finish up work on the enclosure. So I'm going to give Tuco back his camera, and I'll be back at the desk. Oh, Tuco, you're just orbiting the camera tripod again. I was going to give him a bolt, but I don't see one, which is usually the problem. Bolt? Oh, there's one way over here. Okay, maybe we can keep this up. Oh, this needs some focus. Yeah, Tuco has great feet. Okay, back to this view. Hello. So, steps so far. So you'll notice I still have not taken the support material out of this. That was partly because I noticed, even just as I was taking it out of the printer, that it seemed like maybe there was at least like 1 or 2 layers that didn't have great bonding. So given how thin this edge actually is, I was worried that this was just going to break. So I actually didn't want to take out the interior until I reinforced it some. So the coating is definitely, well, I'm getting ahead of myself. So I didn't take off the support material. So I took it off the printer. My ultimate goal with what you see here, so this, yes, how do I introduce this thing that's absolutely obvious? So the shiny thing. So I've already treated this 3D print with basically this brush-on epoxy, and it's it's basically a two-part epoxy that you mix up and brush on, and it has a pretty nice viscosity so that it manages to fill in the space between the 3D printer layers. So it actually gives you a nice, pretty glossy surface, and the instructions say that you can sand it and paint it, although I think I'm just going to leave this like this. And it does change the dimensions a little bit, so I might, for example, have to trim around the USB port. I had been pretty careful to keep sort of slurping drips off of these edges as it was setting up. I put it on top of these little cups to dry. So, yeah, brush on epoxy. The brush is still very, very hard. This is like a foam composite now. And most importantly, I put in the magnets before doing that coating, because there's no way they would have fit afterwards. It's a very tight fit for the magnets. And now the magnets are actually embedded under this epoxy coating, which I think makes them stronger and makes the surface pretty smooth. Do go join me up here on the desk. So I put this epoxy on this morning. It's relatively fast drying. Their pot life is like 10 or 15 minutes, and it cures in a few hours. So it was like tacky as of the afternoon, and then like now it feels totally dry. So yeah, the procedure really was take it off the printer, do some really light sanding just to take off any major 3D printer boogers. Then I carefully pressed the magnets in, and that part actually turned out to be way more annoying than I expected. I probably should have made some kind of tool to help with this. So I designed these holes for the magnets that were where the hole was a little bit oversized, but it had little dimples that were a little bit undersized. So it would provide a decent amount of resistance, but not over the entire surface, just some small pieces of plastic. So, basically, it was annoying partly because there was super glue everywhere and it made things hard to hold, and partly because I had to be careful to not put magnets in. Oh, Tuco, did you start the music? I don't want to get, copyright sued. How do I even stop the music? Oh, there we go. Okay. Yes. I don't think that was actually going directly through. I think it was just hearing it through the mic, so I may be slightly too paranoid about the YouTube copyright bot. Okay, so anyway, yeah, carefully press the magnets in, super glue around them. Really try not to have the magnets just all jump out and attach to each other before the super glue is dry, so that's why the super glue was necessary. The little plastic clippy thing that I added, the kind of plastic clips were not sufficient to actually hold the magnets in against the attraction or repulsion of the neighboring magnets. So I had to use the super glue for that, even though at this point the super glue is not as necessary with the coating. So that said, I did actually add some super glue along the edges too, where I saw what seemed like some bonding issues. So, I mean, you can't even really see which layers were affected at this point, but there are a couple layers that are, so I don't even know if that's actually the same layers. So, I think this is one of the layers I've been having trouble with. This one right there. So you can see kind of a dark line, and I think that one it hadn't bonded super well, so I was worried about structural issues there, so I kind of added some super glue, then wait for the super glue to dry, sand it a little. So I did all that before brushing on the coating. Waited for the super glue to dry, sanded it, dusted it off, brush on the coating, let the coating dry, clean the drips off carefully with a wooden stick as it's drying. I did end up getting some resin pooling in the bottom here, which could have been a problem, but it seems like the fit is still fine anyway. My plan was to sand that if I needed to, but given that it still fits, I'm going to leave the glossy finish since that's kind of nice. I'm going to avoid sanding it. So this should be pretty fast to assemble. Next step is really just to pull this out, but then I want to get the USB connector in there because that could be kind of tricky. It's a tight press fit. I might have to adjust it slightly and glue it if the press fit turns out to be a problem. But I think first we just pull this stuff out, which should be kind of satisfying. Oh, and a lot of people were asking whether this was like a epoxy coating or like an acetone vapor thing. I have not personally tried the acetone vapor process since I usually don't print in ABS anymore. But I've been curious how that works. I've certainly seen other people have good results with it. In this case, this was really exactly what I wanted because with the brush-on process, so I didn't put any internally, so all the internal cutouts that you'll see once we take the support material out, their dimensions aren't going to be affected, which I like, and I don't need that to be coated anyway. I mean, if anything, I might paint the inside of this black or something to give the VFD more contrast, but the slightly rougher blue is also fine. Hey, Tuco. Where's your bolt? So yeah, the brush-on was nice because then I could put it just over the outside where I didn't care about extra material building up. And I was also sure that it was just going to add material, it wasn't going to remove material. That was handy. Alright, let's try just taking this out with some pliers. Maybe clean this desk off a little bit slightly. Hey, Tuco. Yeah, I've mostly been doing PLA because my best printer does not have a heated bed, which makes ABS harder. Yeah. Yeah, I like the way this shape came out. The exterior shape will make a little more sense once you see what this was designed to house. So I think basically that. There's a little bit of adherence on the edges due to some like epoxy overspray, but I figure I will give it a bit of a chamfer with the knife on the edge to clean that up. Hey, Tuco. Oh, nice. I guess it changed fill patterns at this particular layer, so it made kind of, these aren't as tall as they could have been. Or maybe there was like a little jam in the printer, because that's the layer that it seemed like I needed to super glue on the edge. I don't know. Small printing defect. That I might need a better tool to take apart safely. That is fairly solidly epoxied on there, actually. I'll save that for after the easy stuff is out. This is satisfying. Yeah, I'm gonna have to be careful with these edge ones. Okay, that was the last one on that edge. There's just one more on this edge that is lacking a good place to hold on to it. I'm gonna get a bigger knife. I think this is the one I want. Yeah. That was the amount of damage I wanted to do, I think. Okay. Ooh, yeah, there's a decent amount of over glue there. I'll have to find a way to trim that. Nice. Nice. So we've got a couple cutouts for the electronics in the VFD where they were protruding a little more. So that's what this is for. This, I think there was an inductor, well actually a couple of inductors that stuck up a little more. These rails actually hold the VFD circuit board, and I'll be putting some brass threaded inserts into these holes in a sec. That experience of trying to break something in only very specific ways. Which is fun, but also nerve-wracking. Here you can start to see the really deep recess. Or one of them. I think the one over there is actually even deeper. Yeah, this one is for some more stuff that sticks out of the back of the VFD. This one is mostly the jumpers where you set baud rate and all that. I think there are a couple of other parts that I also included in that particular bounding box. Oh no, that's the serial adapter. My mistake. That is below the level of the back of the VFD. So the serial adapter will snap into there. I wire that up, and then the VFD sits completely over it. Oh, there's the deep one. So this one is mainly for wiring. This is where the VFD was originally designed for like a 20 by 2 big old 0.1 inch box header. And so I mostly made that deep enough for both the header pins and a little room for wiring to plug into it, hence the kind of big bulges on either side. Normally the VFD is designed so that this would have all been like behind a panel, so it wouldn't have really mattered how deep it was. They weren't really thinking of this form factor, I think. I mean, I guess this is the closest cousin to like the cash register pull displays, but those were always pretty big and boxy as far as I'd seen them. So, let's put that back on autofocus for a bit, because I think I'm doing a bad job at manual focus. Okay, so I would like to test fit the VFD as soon as I can, but I think the next step is actually to trim these edges so that I can get the VFD in. I'm going to see whether this lends itself to just doing it by hand with a big knife. Kind of. This epoxy is... Oh man, I'm going to get like a cloth or something. I'm really worried about scratching this a lot. Ooh, is my microphone cable long enough to make it to where the new shop cloths are? I think it is. Whoa, long microphone cable. This is the microphone that I don't think this will reach the closet, but it reaches to most places in this part of the shop. All right. Do I sand or do I cut? I mean, this part over here seems the trickiest. Let's see what I can do with this. Kyle points out in chat that breaking things in very specific ways is pretty much all of security research. Bingo. It's also how I learned about most things, so it's it was kind of like security research was another place I found to apply that thing that I had discovered just as a way of teaching myself. Let's see, I need something to make this taller. Taller object. I'll just put a stick vise under here. Oh yeah, this stuff is tough. Nice. Well, maybe actually time to bring out the Dremel. It's not that thick. It's just a little lip where the glue seeped over into the support. Wow. Actually, let's take a look at this under the microscope briefly. Oh man, my microscope monitor is off. You can see it on that screen, but that one's kind of laggy. Hey Tuco, do you know why the microscope screen is off? Anyway. Ouch. One of those plastic pieces was very sharp. So, I think over here, it looks like that's the epoxy cast into the shape. Like I think you're seeing the ridges of the 3D print acting as a mold. Like that interior piece that I just removed was pressing against this epoxy as it cured. So it's got the 3D print lines from the piece that I just removed. And then the one behind it is what I want to keep. So this just chunk of epoxy here is what I need to get rid of. I'll give this just another shot with a knife, but if the knife proves annoying, then I think it's Dremel time. I just really worry about causing more damage to this with the Dremel, because this, I mean, I'm not planning on really doing any additional finishing steps with this part of the plastic, so if I mar it a bunch, then that could just be visible. I could put some kind of black light absorbing material on the inside, like felt or black aluminum foil or something like that. Where is Tuco? Man, yeah, I think this needs the Dremel. I think the knife is not going to cut it. Ha ha ha. I'm also just inspecting the rest of the edge just to see what I want to do to get a consistent edge treatment across all of the edges. Oh, geez, I think Tuco went into the closet where I keep the little towels. I mean, he can get in and out of there anytime he wants. It's just a weird thing for him to do. Huh. Fallen in my footsteps or something. So the front face isn't perfect. There are some gaps here where it just goes right back down to plastic. I think I just kind of want to sand the front with a sanding sponge to give it a kind of... Oh, Tuco, are you looking for a bolt, honey? Yeah. Well, yeah, so I think like this front face, I'm just going to take care of that with a sanding sponge. But like these big chunks I need to cut off. Well, or otherwise, like I don't think the sanding sponge is going to take care of them. That's just going to tear up the sanding sponge. Do I have maybe a little... Well, over on this side, they're kind of isolated enough that I could like maybe just cut them off with like a little saw blade. But over here, it's like a continuous layer. I think I was trying to parse the discussion in chat. I think that was about whether I should try the hot knife. Which... Oh, I think there's another couple of supports I can get out of here. Oh, I hear you, Took. Just a sec. Oh, yeah. It's a chasm. Yeah, it's kind of an inverse tower. A tower of support material with a thing built around it. Oops. A few other random bits of supports. I'm mostly procrastinating. Let me try this other knife. See if I have any better luck with this one. But yeah, maybe I'm headed to the Dremel. Duh, yeah. Oh, microphone wire and Tuco cam are having an interaction that I don't necessarily want. Hey, Tuco. Excuse me and my wire. Oh, so I really, really don't want something that's going to lodge particles in the rest of this. So, no sanding discs. I was thinking maybe this little metal high-speed tool. I don't know what this one's called, but the one that's like spherical. I think that one might do the job without embedding any grit. This thing. Oh, who's asking me to back drag the knife? I don't understand. Do you mean the hot knife? Or is there some technique I'm missing? Okay, Tuco. I'll try to figure out what's going on with the chat here. Oh, back drag the knife leaves a more uniform finish. Yeah, well, I think right now I'm just worried about cutting it. Because right now, yeah, I mean, I can maybe do that to get rid of small flecks of stuff, but this is some really tough stuff. I need to grind it off with a power tool. Okay, let's give this a blast with the compressed air maybe too. Oh, I'm going to, oh, Tuco, that's part of my Dremel, honey. Tuco, that's not a bolt, that's like a collet. I mean, not a collet, a collar. That like goes around the collet and holds like spacers and stuff. Hey, buddy. Can I move the scope? Oh yeah, this is for the like router attachment thing. Okay, cat. Oh man, this microphone wire is starting to drive me crazy. Tuco. Oh, he's still over there. Where is he? Oh. I think that's like is that a camera lens cap? Like, not like for a good camera, but for like a little camera? That seems safe for him to play with. Difficult to track, especially while I'm trying to do other things. Okay, I hope this Dremel's still in good shape. Get some safety glasses. Maybe I will put away the headset mic. I think the boom is enough, and probably won't even want that with the Dremel going. It seems like it's all right. So the main reason I chose this instead of the sanding cylinder is I didn't want to risk getting any grit from the tool into the plastic. Because I've had the sanding cylinder, sand the thing before just right, but also discolor the surface pretty badly. I was trying to avoid that. I think I did sand a little too deep in a couple of places, but I think I'm just going to try going over it with the sanding sponge and see how even I can make it. And if it needs some filler, I can just put a little bit of 5-minute epoxy on it or something. Hey, Zuko. Supportive. Okay. So, so the next couple of things to do, I think, are sanding this edge. There's one spot I think I missed with the Dremel. Hit this with the Dremel. Oh, I'm gonna hit this with a knife and see if that comes off. Oh yeah, that was easy. Okay, so I want to clean up this edge around here. I also want to put in the USB connector before I really worry too much about finishing this interior edge, I think. Because I'm worrying a little bit about what kind of pushing I have to do to get this in, so I want to do that sooner rather than later. It would be more convenient to attach the wiring harness if I do that before pushing in the USB, but I think I might just save that and just do point to point once everything's in. I could see reasons to do it either way. Oh, he's got a bolt way over there. Alright. This sanding sponge is full of super glue. Let's get a fresh one. This was here for a reason. Just trying to protect the surface from scratching up against the table. Just deciding how to finish this. Some of these edges don't look great. I think this turned out kind of bad. So I think I'm going to focus on mostly getting a nice front on this, not having any serious stuff sticking up. And then assume that I'm going to paint this inside edge black, I think. And that'll fill in these little gaps too, I think. I could also try mixing pigment in with some of the same epoxy stuff I used on the outside. I could try that. I might do, I should do that after I put in the brass inserts also, because the brass inserts, I'm gonna need to be like sticking a soldering iron down in there. I don't know if the order matters that much. Man. Some of these edges very unsatisfying. It's like the coating kind of wants to start peeling from this edge, so it's almost like I want to use a pigmented version of that same coating to continue the edge inside. But I think part of the thing I was trying to do with sanding was to make the coating less brittle along the edge by kind of gradually thinning it out. I don't know if that's working. I mean, I think the edge looks alright where it just happens to have not run into any problems, but I need some way of hiding the crimes in a couple of places where it's imperfect, so increasing the visual contrast and hiding the crimes. 2 reasons to paint the inside black. I guess I could paint this edge too, just to make the edge a little less obvious. Okay. Well, maybe that's what I'll do. Maybe I'll put in the brass inserts and the USB port, and then do some kind of finishing on this interior surface. And then I'll probably have to let that dry before mounting the actual VFD. But at that point it'll be putting in some screws and soldering up some wires. I can do a test fit now though. We can do a test fit. That's the thing. Okay. Oh, Tuco, don't call that, please. Tuco. Cats. Oh, this corner is not quite clear enough. Oh, maybe I just have to put it in very straight. I think the corner needs to be opened up slightly. Oh yeah, there's an epoxy glob in the corner here that I missed. I hear you, Tuco. Where's your bolt? There's one. Well, that's good to find soon rather than later. Don't want to be painting over this epoxy glob. There we go. same glob left. Not exceptionally well bonded to some of these places on the edge. But I think I'm going to include that in the area that I'll recoat with the darker color. I think I might just mix some of the main black pigment I have is like iron oxide. I can mix some of that with that epoxy, or I could just use paint. But I like the consistency of this epoxy coat. The gloss might be a problem, but it might also be fine. Having a little bit of reflection could be interesting. Okay, let's give this another shot. This should just barely fit when it's totally parallel. I mean, not as in like I made the dimensions exactly the same. There should be a bit of a margin there. Maybe not enough. That's interesting. This is probably going to work. It might just take some care. Getting the epoxy to peel off cleanly in one piece might have been the way to go. Because it does seem like the interface between the epoxy and the PLA isn't as strong as either. Coat this inside edge with anything that's going to make it thicker in this case. So maybe I'll skip that. Maybe I'll just try to clean this up as much as I can. Oh, this is actually giving me a nice chamfer. That's kind of nice, actually. Sharp knife. Oh, Tuco, you sure are sharp. Oh, it sounded crackly. Where was that coming from? don't like the sound of layers delaminating. Seems fine. Yeah, and this like exterior shade part is not the strongest. The place I was originally planning on putting this, it was going to have a light like right above it, so I needed to be really sure that the light wasn't going to shine directly onto the screen. This certainly puts a lot of stress on the plastic. Like, I think these are the weak layers right here. Yeah. Not so good. I don't think I would print this with such a thick shade on it, or such a thin shade on it, rather. Thin in that direction. If I did this again. Let's give that another try. Okay. Yeah, also next time leaving more clearance around the VFD. This was too tight. problem right now is definitely those corners. I mean, I know it looks like maybe I just put a radius on it and didn't actually think about giving the board clearance, but I think it might be a slightly more subtle problem. Like maybe this top part warped a little as it printed. In the CAD drawing there was clearance. Might also still just be some epoxy in those corners. It's also possible this doesn't match the CAD drawing. Got way too tired of plan A there. This might be easier on the sander. I don't think this needs much rounding though. It's very tight. Don't want to hit this VFD with much vibration, you know. Did that help? Oh, nice. Perfect fit. Let's see, is that actually a good fit? Does that line up with all the screw holes? Screw holes are not super clear right now, so it's hard to tell entirely, but it looks like it. So that's how it's designed to fit. So vertical pole goes up through there, and that's the VFD with its kind of like candy blue rim. And so one of the questions is whether to finish this matte black. That would actually look kind of nice. And it would help hide some of the crimes here on the edge. But I think the next thing to do, now that we know this fits, is put in brass inserts and then make sure this fits with screws. And then put in the USB port. And those, I think, are the next couple of difficult fit tasks. And yeah, I was thinking about like some kind of faceplate for this too. I tried putting some films over it. But I think I kind of like it just open like this. You know, I like having the actual tube exposed. And I think the contrast will be enough. There's still certainly the option to put something over it if I need to, but this case feels much more substantial when there's actually a reason for it to be this thick. All right, let's try brass inserts. Cool. Oh, and I should probably demo the magnet feature too. So I think it's probably gonna go, there's a bunch of places it can go, but here's one place. Actually, I don't remember off the top of my head what this pole diameter is, but it seems to be pretty common. My light stands and those laptop stands both use the same one. Looks like 36.5 millimeters or 1.44 inches. I forget exactly how I represented that in CAD, but it seems to be close enough for both of these. So it just kind of sticks right on there. And it's actually got a substantial amount of pull to it, so I'm not worried about this falling off with the VFD attached. Get a better view from this side. So it starts pulling pretty well just from the side magnets, and then you can kind of seat it all the way down, and it actually, the force of the magnets plus the friction from the magnets and the resin work pretty well. So I'll be able to pick this up and move it around pretty easily if I need to do that. Oh yeah, good question in the chat. Do VFDs get hot? Very, very slightly. I tried getting a pic on my thermal camera, and I mean, you can't really see the heat off the glass because that's just going to reflect the IR. But even from nearby surfaces, or if I put something on top of the glass, it was very subtle. A lot of equipment seems to get warmer than the VFDs, even though they do require the heat for operation. It's not very much heat. All right. So, brass inserts. I'm going to warm up. I think I'm just going to warm up my other soldering iron. This is my B-team soldering iron over here at the moment. I'm just going to use, actually, let's put a thicker tip on it, because I'm just going to use this to melt brass inserts into the plastic. So I'm not like sticking the iron directly into plastic, but it still it warms up pretty fast. Still not something I want to use my best tip for. Is this tip still alright? I think I have a pretty not so great tip that I could use for this. Well, I don't actually know what state it's in, but it's certainly big enough. Let me take off. variety of M3 hardware here. So I've got these threaded inserts, which is what I designed this case to use. Various lengths of M3 nuts we could use. I also might put standoffs on the top side just for aesthetic reasons, because it might be nice to have the screw heads raised up closer to the actual display level. But anyway, mostly having threaded inserts and screws that will fit the VFD are the thing right now. So these should line themselves up somewhat with the case, but of course the soldering iron will just melt through whatever plastic I push it toward, so there's going to be some amount of needing to do this right. So it's also tempting to like put one of those on a screw and then just heat up the whole screw. I don't know, I've been wanting to try the soldering iron method first, though. That's people who I've suggested, or who I've seen recommend threaded inserts. This is what they've suggested so far. Just clearing out these holes. The 3D printer left some garbage in them. I feel like doing this with a screw attached will make it much easier to hold them straight up and down. Let's just test this with a nut or with a bolt there. Just for reference, the bolt itself should fit clearly into that toward to some greater depth. So I'd like to be able to maintain that depth. Well, let's see how this fits. I need some metal tweezers. That's really bad lighting. That's better. Yeah, I'll try just jamming it in there with the soldering iron, but I'm a little worried about the straightness, so this might end up not working, but more slack on this soldering iron wire. Oh, I already started melting the side of this a little bit. Yeah, slight melt right there. At least it smells alright. Thanks, PLA. Well, that was the jam the soldering iron and approach. Get a longer screw just so this is easier to test. In fact, maybe a longer screw helps me set this while it's still not entirely firm. Ooh, yeah. That PLA is still pretty squishy. And I might have gotten solder on the threads, but definitely need to wait until that PLA hardens a little bit before I try to do much with it. Okay, well, let's try putting in the other three, and then I'll put the VFD in and see if they line up, and if they don't, I can apply some heat to the bolts. Seems alright. So I think I'm getting the threads a little bit gunked up with both PLA and solder. I mean, just tiny bits of solder. My iron seems pretty clean, but I'll find out once this cools. Right now the PLA around the insert is going to be really hot and gooey, and it's not going to take much torque. So I'm just going to do all of these and then do whatever I have to all of them as a next step. Yeah, I don't think I'm getting much plastic on this tip, but I still would not do this with my favorite tip. Obviously off center. Bring that one a little back. I guess it is easy to nudge the insert around with the soldering iron, so I don't have to worry too much about these being locked in place. One more. Some of these brass inserts are drilled very off-center too. Oh, come on, focus. might just be a bad camera angle. This thing is so deep that it's messing with my lighting setup. Okay. So, yeah, it's tempting to try to insert the VFD and use that to kind of line these up as the plastic cools, but I don't think I'm going to do more. I don't think that's going to help more than I'm going to risk damaging things more. So, I think I'm going to let those cool while I focus on the USB port. Alright, so this was my prototype for the USB port. There's a very kind of tight press fit kind of boot that goes around the port and holds it very firmly in the direction that the connector is going to be moving in. But I don't need this prototype anymore, so I'll extract this from it. This thing is sturdy. I mean, I could just use a fresh USB jack, but I mean, I'm going to want to take this apart at some point. Might as well make that part of this project. Can I start to push it out? Oh yeah, let's get that focused. Servo. Oh yeah, nice. There's our USB jack. So that just goes in here. There's a little bit of epoxy up here that's kind of in the way. See if I can crack that off quickly with the knife. If not, it might be Dremel time. Oh, I think this is cracking. This corner is more critical than I anticipated. This corner needs to be clear of epoxy. And that knife is too big. I didn't intentionally put epoxy anywhere in the middle. This just leaked in through the open USB port. I probably could have masked it off before brushing on the coating. Didn't think I would need to. Seems like that was the major chunk. So this is a tight fit, but it should fit. Just needs to not have any junk in there. I think I see what it's hung on. This is probably also a case where it would have been fine to make the tolerances a little looser and then glue it in place. So, man, last time I made a case like this, it was all epoxy. Mostly, at least. I started with some kind of standard project box, and then I just started epoxying and sanding until I got the shape I wanted. I think this edge is a little lumpy. Oh, I think the thing that I just cut off was intended to be the snap that helps hold it on. But that was what it was hung on. I still have one of them. I think I just overdid it. If it still needs that, which I don't know it will, I'll add some glue. Yeah, I didn't really give it anywhere to, give the plastic anywhere to bend, so it wasn't really acting as a snap. It was just an obstruction. Kind of forgot that part of the design. Oh, I think that's it. Starting to go. I like to do this without impaling myself or scuffing up the case too much. Start to see it coming through. This part is not really going to have much video. See my hands and my scrunched up face. I'm glad I didn't try to do this with a wiring harness on there. It's still got a little bit more pushing, but this is working. I mean, before I did this in the vise, but I don't really have anything good to vise onto up here. I mean, I left a little bit of flat space here, but I'd like to not have to clamp onto it. If I can avoid that. So I think I just need something to push on here with. push on this with. It's overkill, but sure. No, that's not strong enough. Kind of want an X-Acto with no blade. One of these thick knife handles with the blade taken off. Like that. Okay, there we go. Press fit. Oh, that is nice. That's probably not going to need any glue. Let's get the connector or the USB cable and see how that fits. Is this a USB cable? It is. Cool. Yay! That's nice. And it holds the cable on by itself just fine. Yay. Cool. Alright, what's next? Well, brass insert should be cool by now, I think. I don't think this plastic holds on to heat that long. So, I'm just going to try putting a screw in just to see how clear the threads are. And maybe I need an actual M3 tool for this, because that would be handy. So M3, yeah, that USB connector required a couple of test prints to get the tolerances just the way I wanted them. I did so that little one that you saw me tested, cut it out of was I think the second one I printed. First one was a bust, but it didn't take as many iterations as it seemed like it might. Is this an M2? That's M2. Sure. Well, it's not amazingly straight. Might be fine. I think I'm gonna try putting the VFD in there and just pick a screw size. I don't think I'm going to want to go super deep into this anyway. I think I might want the screws to not be super long, even though I did try to leave room behind in case I wanted the screws to be longer. These aren't amazing, but they're fine. And they're probably better than some other captive nut solution that I would have come up with. Okay. So, VFD. Okay. And I think I do want to put brass spacers between the board and the screws for a few reasons. I think it would look more interesting. I think it would also maybe protect the circuit board a little bit from the screw heads. Mostly it's for looks. It also might let me adjust the screw lengths that I use to something a little more convenient. And as for screw lengths, I wonder if I have any stainless steel hardware in a good length. I've got some M3x16s that might work out just fine. These might be too long, actually. What are you stuck on? Oh yeah, these are way too long. I mean, there's room below the brass insert, but I don't think the brass insert is in great enough shape for me to go all the way through it. I think I might use a shorter screw. So shorter than M3x16. I have 8 and 10. Do 8's even... 8's gotta be too short, yeah. I mean, if I'm using the brass things. So 10? Well, maybe I don't use the, let's try these. Screws are not quite as fancy as what I would have liked, but it's probably a good contrast with the brass. With this darker screw. So that doesn't have a lot sticking out. This is the M10. I think I might have 12s also. Not right in front of me though. That is not long enough. Oh yes, no, just I don't think it is long enough. Okay, let's try the M8 without the brass. Just trying to make sure I don't over tighten this. So the M8 is a little on the long side. The M8 with a maybe nylon washer would be amazing. I wonder if I have any nylon washers this size. I don't think I have any good washers. Maybe. Oh, might have some little spacers though. thought I had is quite the right size. Or I'll find like a little one-off thing, but I'm not gonna have like 4 of those. I think these, oh yeah, I've got, see if I had 4 of these, that'd be great. Do I have more than one? I like this little nylon washer. Made of silicone. Anyway, let's just try putting this in with M8s and see if that seems to hold to my liking. I can always put nicer hardware in this later. The screws don't want to go super deep into the spacer, or into the brass inserts, but it seems like it might be fine. There's a bit of a gap between the screws and the VFD, which, I mean, there are a lot of solutions to that, including just building the faceplate that goes over that. I mean, the faceplate solution would also mean I don't have to paint the inside. So maybe that is an idea that gets more traction. Like a black PLA piece that fits into here and covers some of the kind of extraneous parts of the display. Although part of the reason I didn't want the faceplate is I kind of like seeing the pins and the bezel on the tube. So that is not screwed in as securely as I would like, but it's probably not going to bounce around. And if I can get some washers in there, it'll be great. Got that, it's got the USB. Let's test this on the poles just to make sure the magnets hold all that weight. Ooh, that wasn't a good noise. Oh, you can hear the VFD wires ring when it sticks on. But yeah, that's pretty much what I wanted, I think. I think it just needs wiring. And it can go down here. It definitely makes noise when you attach it. Maybe it would be good to have rubber washers under this, if that's a thing. I didn't really design this to have good shock absorption. Well, I guess I need to figure out whether I'm putting like a black paint coating on the inside or not, if that affects what I do next. I do think it would look better with some contrast. I mean, some more contrast between this and the outside. Well, I think paint or ink or something like that, maybe. I don't necessarily want something thick like that epoxy. So some slight soldering there and burns. But yeah, I think there are plenty of options here, including putting a bezel on it, having resin, I've got some of this like blackout foil that I could use, but I think right now I'm concerned about something that is simple and does not add thickness to this, at least not much thickness. So I think I might want to sand out some of the lumps caused by the soldering iron, and then honestly thinking about just like masking it and spray painting it. Because I think I've got black spray paint. Oh no, an LED backlit bezel. I don't like that idea. I mean, I get the appeal of mixing like vacuum, like phosphor discharge kind of tech with LEDs. I've seen it done to interesting effects sometimes, but I don't know. It seems more often it's kind of, you know, you're hoping it would be more than the sum of its parts, but it turns out to be less than either of the parts. So I think I'd rather the only light source on this be the VFD. I think this epoxy is dry enough to where I don't really have to worry about masking tape sticking to it or any of that. Although that said, I think I'm going to try to use the nicest masking tape I have on hand. And so I definitely want to mask off, like I think just a straight line around here. So to try to get the paint to cover the front, just a well-defined amount of this, so maybe like a third of this in a straight line, and then all the inside. And I'll mask off like the connector and the actual screw inserts and stuff. So I think that's what's doing. And I think that does mean I let that paint dry before doing much more of the work. I can still maybe do some of the prep on this serial board, but I might also just spray paint and then take that as a good cue to end the stream, and we'll come back to this project at its next step. Servo AF. Aw, thanks. Some folks in the chat were complimenting my project as being Servo AF. Oh, that reminds me, I mentioned I had some foils, or some films. So I want to demo that, because while we're talking about bezels, that is an option. And while I feel like I may have already made up my mind, I'd like to at least document what the options are. So let's plug this back in just long enough to get it showing some stuff to test with. Wires. Where are the wires? So many wires. Oh man, so many wires. Here we go. This one goes to the correct computer. I actually remember the pin out of this VFD at the moment, or at least the pins I care about. Okay. I think I've got this set up so I can just plug it in and it'll start displaying stuff. If the daemon starts running, and if I remember to plug in the thing in the right pin. Let's check the wiring. I totally might have remembered the pinout wrong. As I search for the photo I took of that wiring when I did it a while ago. Clearly the iPhone needs a way to visually search by the colors of the wires that were in the photo. Yeah, maybe this was further back than I thought. So Oh, there it is. Yay. And it matches. Okay, let's check the daemon. I thought I had it set to auto restart, and so as soon as the serial port showed up, it should come back, but maybe it's giving up after a while. That worked. Okay. So this is even worse than normal because we've got all this light happening. But yeah, so we can see this monitoring what's going on right now. Currently I'm recording the audio and I'm recording the stream. And the stream announcer's running and transcode's running, so all that's good. So I got a few different... So this'll be a little bit worst case with the lighting coming in from above, but let's examine a few different films. So this is just a polarizing film, which is kind of nice. It makes it so the green, the bright green pixels are darker as well. But I think a lot of what the benefit you get from this is that it kind of cuts down on glare. The light that goes in and then back out is going to be attenuated a lot more than the light that's just coming out. And I don't think it's going to be sensitive to angle at all. So that's kind of nice. It does dim the whole thing quite a bit noticeably though. And I don't happen to have pieces of it that are larger than the VFD right now. And we could try some different colors. Maybe this will be easier to see with the light off. Blue is kind of nice. See nothing with the red. And the green doesn't improve the contrast much, but it looks nice. That's alright, but pretty dim. That's fine. Is that a different blue? Yeah. Yeah, the darker blue doesn't look as nice as the lighter blue. But I think so far I like it without any kind of filter still. And I mean, really, the filter I have is putting it in the shadow, which is kind of like that, which is kind of nice. So, yeah, that's what I got. All right. So I think masking time. stuff. Fancy painter's tape. And flat black enamel. And I'll throw my phone onto the ground. Helps it operate. Yeah, it looks much better in the shadow. All right. Luckily, this 3D print already has horizontal lines to act as a guide for straightness. Deciding how big the stripe should be. Go roughly that peg. I could actually make this look nicer with a slightly asymmetric paint job. I just had this piece of tape laid that way to get it out of the way, but it gave me the idea to kind of make this angled. And so I didn't actually want to make it structurally angled because that would have made it a lot harder to print. But now I'm thinking that maybe I want it to kind of look like it has that angle. So I actually have a thicker black line across the bottom and a thinner black line across the top. That's not what I already masked out, but I like it. Let's swap this. Yeah, I think I want something more like that on the bottom. Oh, I just noticed a question from chat. I'm guessing this is printed with the open side down. Yes, it's printed with a bunch of support material that I pulled out. And this was the top side. Okay, the sides are going to be interesting. So, this will be the bottom side. This will still be bright blue. This will be flat matte black. I feel like I maybe want to lightly sand this to help the paint stick, because the epoxy is super glossy. Okay. Oh, I like this masking tape. It's really thin. All right. Probably a decent amount. Well, I want a little more on the back of this to protect from overspray. But mostly I need to put some in the interior now. Get some wider tape for this side. I lied. I think I want to keep using this delicate surface tape for the delicate surface. So yeah, I'm planning on painting just the interior and kind of this stripe along the edges, partially to hide some of the crimes around the front of the edge here, and partly to increase the visual contrast, and partly just to make it look cool. I hope. You know, it might backfire terribly. I'd like to keep paint out of this backside. Okay, so a lot of this. So with this interior, all of this that's still visual, you know, everything that isn't covered up by the VFD, I want painted matte black. So I've already covered up everything that needs to, for aesthetic reasons, stay shiny and blue. But, checking over this masking job again. But, you know, I definitely want to mask off the connector here because I don't want to get paint in that. And the brass inserts, of course. The rest of it doesn't matter super much, but I might as well mask off these holes just not to fill them with paint, you know? And this actually has some tolerances that I don't want to gook up with paint either. This wants a nice square edge. That's not amazing, but as long as it doesn't pop up above that shelf that the VFD sits on, I'm fine. Oh, I can kind of like squish the masking tape into the insert a little bit. Seems to help it stick around the perimeter. Fill this insert with masking tape so that the paint can't get in. Oops, that was hollower than I remembered it. It's like one of those cartoon booby traps. Okay. Well, I think there'll be plenty of black paint in those creases once I start painting. Oh yeah, sanding a little bit, just a little bit. There's some soldering iron bumps, and I want to make sure that the paint adheres on top of the epoxy. So I had a few minor soldering iron mishaps to sand. Might be easier to even out using the knife, actually. I don't know. Maybe I just don't worry about it, because it is kind of subtle. That helped a little bit. And over here. Just not going to mess with that one too much more. That one's a bit gnarly. Maybe I can sand it. That's an improvement. All right. I think that's fine. So now I'm just sanding this epoxy a little to help this stick. Very close. From Kyle in chat, the spouse is in the room playing video games, and now I'm getting looks like, why the hell are you listening to sanding noises? I am probably getting the same looks from my cat, except he's probably not paying attention. I'm about ready to hit this with the spray paint. Okay, let's get the overspray protection in place. Ventilation. just do this on the floor, not to risk getting any spray paint on the equipment. But I can re-aim that. It's easier to move the object than the camera sometimes. Tape is very sparsely stuck to some of the interior pieces, so as soon as there's a little paint on it, it's not going to have any problem staying stuck. All right. Well, I think at the risk of turning this stream into watching paint dry, I think I'd better end it approximately now. Well, unless Tuco wants to play. Let's see if he's up for anything. He's over there in the kitchen, but I don't know if he's up for playing right now. Or maybe he's still hunting something I'm unaware of. What are you looking for, Tico? Alright. I think Tuco's in a stalking sort of mood. Hard to get him in one place on the camera. Got the fan running. Got the paint drying. I will see you folks on the other side of this painting adventure. In the meantime, happy hacking. Keep holding down the fort in whatever ways you enjoy doing so. See you next time.